Cowboys traded for new backup quarterback Joe Milton. Good morning, Bob. How are you, sir?
Hey, I'm doing great. How are you guys?
Doing well. Thank you for asking. Bob, what did you think of the trade compensation? Were you surprised by it, or were you and other Patriot fans expecting more?
Well, I try to be realistic. I was surprised. I thought that maybe Milton would bring back a little more, as particularly, in light of some of the other recent trades for backup quarterbacks. But then you start to think about reasons why they traded him. And obviously the guy you just heard me try to describe with that sensational play in Tennessee last year is the primary reason, Drake May. His classmate. They drafted the two quarterbacks, as you know, together. But I think also that there's, Joe Milton had this remarkable flourish to end the season against the Buffalo Bills, and he has tremendous physical skills. But he is still, I think, very much a great unknown, and a lot of the questions that followed him out of the University of Tennessee into the NFL as a late-round draft pick remain for most people. So I think when you sit down and process it, while a lot of fans here are disappointed, I still think the Patriots accomplished what they needed to. They got another pick. They were able to move up a bit, I think 46 slots in the end. And they developed him to a point where he became an asset. And I think they traded him when his value for them was at its highest.
Bob, Mike Reese said this sparks a thought that the trade was driven, Patriots insider, that this was driven as much by QB room dynamics as anything else. What does that mean?
Well, Mike Reese is as good as they come in covering the Patriots, certainly, and I think with Todd Archer in that group as well down there, among the best in the business, and he is a guy that certainly is well sourced, and I think has a great perspective, and is not someone who is prone to hyperbole. And I think that you look at just the recent lessons for the Patriots. They had two quarterbacks who came in a year apart. Mac Jones, first-round pick, 2021. Bailey Zappi the next year is a fourth-round pick. And Jones gets hurt against Baltimore early in the season, his second year. Zappi comes in and wins a couple of games. And then Jones, at that point, he is beginning his slide from where he was as a rookie. And for all intents and purposes, by the end of his tenure, he was a broken quarterback here. And at that same time, Bailey Zappi had a little taste of success early as a Patriots starter. There were calls for him to replace Mac Jones, chants from the crowd. And over the course of the next couple of years, I think that the dynamics in that quarterback room were unhealthy for both of them and for the team as a whole. You had a guy that was the number one pick and was drafted to be the next franchise quarterback, and you had another guy who probably felt like, hey, I outplayed him when I got my opportunity. And in the end, neither prospered from that, and nor did the team. And so I think that's part of it. That's the background historically in the recent past for the Patriots. But I think also, in the case of Joe Milton, he's a bit older for a rookie quarterback to come in, given his experience at the college level. Like I said, he's a guy that finished, I think, very surprising to a lot of people internally, just how well he played against Buffalo, understanding that the Bills didn't really try very hard in that game. They didn't play the regulars, and it wasn't exactly the most complex defense, more like a preseason approach for them, as they were more than willing to let the Patriots win, I think, and slide out of that number one pick and fall to the fourth spot overall. But I think that's primarily it. I think I don't know any information inside regarding either personality, whether there was an issue between them. I don't suspect so. I just think it was an opportunity to trade Joe Milton coming off that season finale, but also at the same time eliminate any possibility of a reoccurrence of what took place with Mac Jones and Bailey Zappi inhabited that same room.
Bob Socci, Patriots play-by-play, join us here 105 through the fan. Okay, so don't interpret it that Joe has a personality problem. Interpret it as, we're just trying to avoid Drake looking over his shoulder at the backup.
I think Drake looking over his shoulder, and of course the memory for fans too here locally is going to be that performance by Joe Milton. And I think a lot of people, when the Patriots picked him, thought, maybe Milton, they might have something here, and especially the reports out of training camp and early in the season when the Patriots delayed the start for Drake May as the quarterback of this team, taking over for Jacoby Brissett. Milton seems like a really likable guy. He's bright. He's got a great energy about him, very positive from everything that I've seen and experienced. So, yeah, I would say don't read into it as much about Joe Milton as more or less just eliminating that possibility of having Drake May look over his shoulder and as well having the fans, clamoring for that backup quarterback, that young backup quarterback who is his classmate. If there are any, growing pains this year as he adapts to a new offense under Josh McDaniels.
Bob, the tools he has are they're vast. Like, what is his issue? Is it ability to read defenses? Is he inaccurate? Like, what is his biggest, kind of hump that he has to get over?
Yeah, there's no question about it. I mean, he physically, he looks like Cam Newton. There's a couple of plays, if you go back, including one that was negated by a penalty, where it's very much like Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes spinning out of the pocket, keeping a play alive, rolling to the left, and then throwing a dart to the corner of the end zone. When you hear the term rocket or a cannon applied to a pitcher or a quarterback, I mean, this is a guy that is the definition of that. We saw that in training camp. What we didn't see, to your point, to your question, was the accuracy. And what we understood when he was drafted by the Patriots and coming out of Tennessee, big reason why he went where he went in the draft, was if not the inability, then at least I think, maybe being further behind other quarterbacks, let's say, in terms of reading and processing. And in that particular game, like I said, against the Buffalo Bills, where we saw him for extended action, and the only other times we really saw him during the year were training camp and the preseason, when, again, you're going against vanilla defenses and there's very little scheming. I don't think we really got to gauge whether he could truly process. I do think, though, that the team internally was very pleasantly surprised with the progress that he made behind the scenes. Did a lot of work with visualization, some 3D technology that they incorporated in his development on the practice field. Certainly made strides in a significant way, according to coaches, by the end of the year. But I still think that those questions remain about whether Joe Milton can process what he sees at the line of scrimmage before the snap, and then his defense has changed from what he first recognized once the play begins to unfold, how he's going to handle that.
Patriots play-by-play guy Bob Socci joining us here on 105 through the Fan. Okay, Bob, you kind of just touched on it there a little bit at the end, talking about the progress that he made. The big issue here with Trey Lance in Dallas, when Dallas gambled on him, was just you consistently heard from people that there wasn't a lot of consistent progress. Was it something in New England that if they didn't trade him, were you hearing any sort of feedback that the coaching staff felt like, all right, not only is he progressing, but he's showing to be a good student, and we think there's still more room for him to tap into. We think he's capable of being more.
Well, what's kind of interesting is that you have a coaching staff now that is new from the coaching staff he had as a rookie, and it's a different offense under Josh McDaniels, and it's a difficult offense under McDaniels, even though he's, as recently as yesterday, said he's going to merge some of the ideas from people who've been around the West Coast, which is what the Patriots ran last year. And it was really a old-fashioned West Coast offense under Alex Van Pelt. And I dare to say it was a really simplified offense in comparison to what they're going to ask the quarterbacks to run this year. It's an offense that became Tom Brady's offense and evolved with McDaniels. And again, he's indicated he's going to scale it back and streamline and incorporate other ideas, but still different language. I think a lot of different things incumbent upon the quarterback in the line of scrimmage, especially. And so I think that those questions existed internally. But you have a staff that really didn't have any experience with Joe Milton. There are a couple of holdovers on the coaching staff, but really not in any positions. When you talk about the hierarchy, head coach Mike Vrabel, offensive coordinator Josh McDaniels, quarterbacks coach Ashton Grant, Thomas Brown, Todd Downing, all these guys have come in as former offensive play callers elsewhere, and they're on the staff now. They weren't here a year ago. So I think that's part of the equation, too, when you consider their evaluation of Joe Milton. And I think you look at Vrabel, as I say, as the head coach taking over. Elliott Wolf drafted Milton. He remains as the vice president of player personnel. One of the ongoing questions here, and I think we're seeing it answered on a daily basis more and more, is who has the say over personnel ultimately. And I think it's Vrabel's call. And part of the trade of Joe Milton is that Mike Vrabel and his staff felt that, it's a move they could make, and it's a move they should make at this point in time.
Bob, how much of the feedback from fans that you heard during the season was related to, we always hear backup quarterback's the most popular guy in town, but how much demand did it feel like there was from Patriots fans who were like, let's roll with Joe Milton. We liked what we saw. We want him out there. We want to see him get a chance.
I'll say, to be honest with you, too, and I'm going to probably contradict myself in some way. I don't think we got that because what people saw of Drake May was encouraging enough, and at times, and I'll go back to the play at the end of regulation against Tennessee, they were saying, why wasn't this guy in there to start the season? Why did they wait until Houston in the middle of the season to put Drake May in there? By the end of the season, though, after that game in Buffalo, I think, I think some people, had a pretty high and inflated opinion, perhaps, of Joe Milton. In case Drake May stumbles, you would probably hear more from those people on Sports Talk Radio here. But I don't think, like, during the course of last year, there were any of those calls. Milton was really largely an unknown to fans, except for the fact that, they knew this guy did backflips on a daily basis on the practice field at training camp, had a rocket arm, and was big and mobile and really looked the part.
Bob, last aspect of the trade, Jordan Schultz said that other teams were interested and the Patriots had a better offer, but chose to send him where he wanted out of respect for him. Boston Sports Talk lost their mind over this yesterday. Why would you do a favor to a 6th-round first-year player? What do you make of that report?
Yeah, well, Jordan's, he's an established reporter, and I have no reason to doubt his reporting on this, and I can completely understand. I guess it goes back to my initial reaction of some mild disappointment that the Patriots dealt Milton to Dallas if they had a better offer to send him elsewhere. And maybe part of that, I don't know for sure, was conference related, division related. In the case too of a situation like this, I go back to when the Patriots traded Jimmy Garoppolo to San Francisco, and Bill Belichick picked up the phone and made a call to John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan, and the return on Garoppolo was a 2nd-round pick, and I think that there was great regret on the part of a lot of followers of the team and a lot of criticism and scrutiny, certainly from Sports Talk Radio, my friends on our flagship station, and it's lingered. Really, I think it lingered from that point in time when Jimmy was dealt away through the end of Bill's tenure. Frustration, like, why didn't you get more for this guy when you had such a valuable asset? And so I think that the feeling of like doing another team a favor or doing the player that solid. Why do that at the expense of getting more for the player? And the feeling when Belichick made that trade of Garoppolo to San Francisco is that he wanted to put him in a good place, really had a lot of respect for Kyle Shanahan, and wanted to see Jimmy do well. When you had a team like Cleveland that, going back to the Combine that year, was sending every signal that they were very interested in Jimmy Garoppolo, and perhaps the Patriots could have gotten a lot more in return for him. So I think that's part of the background when it comes to that discussion here locally with Joe Milton. I don't think it's apples to apples necessarily, but I do understand it.